Picture Manchester, England, around the turn of the 20th century. It is 4:45 in the morning. The streets are dark and quiet. Most windows are black. Most people are asleep. But one man is already awake. He walks through the street carrying a long wooden pole. He stops beneath a second-floor window, raises the pole, and starts tapping. Not knocking, tapping. A deliberate rhythm, hard enough to wake the person inside, but careful enough not to break the glass. He waits. If nobody stirs, he taps again. Then he moves on to the next house, and the next, and the next, sometimes dozens upon dozens before sunrise. This was not a strange hobby. It was a paid job. His customers were workers who had to be awake at a particular hour, often before dawn, because someone else was waiting for them somewhere else. A factory, a mill, a workshop, a railway platform. Today, the problem sounds almost trivial. You set an alarm, you put the phone beside the bed, you sleep. At the appointed time, a machine makes a sound. But for much of history, waking up on time was not a private mechanical function. It was a human service. And the people who provided that service were called knocker-ups. To understand why they existed, you have to understand something that industrial society changed forever. Time stopped being only something people observed and became something they had to obey. The idea of waking someone at a set time was much older than the factory age. Around the 4th century BC, Plato was reportedly associated with a water clock that could produce a signal at a predetermined time. Later, mechanical and water-driven clocks in China and the Islamic world were used to mark hours in daily routines. So the technology of measuring time was old. What changed was the scale of the problem. Before industrialization, many people organized their day around daylight, local bells, religious routines, and the rhythms of agricultural work. Morning arrived because the sky brightened. Work began when the community began. The seasons mattered. The sun mattered. None of those systems was especially precise. But precision was not always the point. If your work was tied to the land, being 30 minutes late did not necessarily mean the same thing it meant inside a factory. Then industrialization changed the equation. Factories tied huge numbers of people to a machine schedule instead of the sun's. A cotton mill in Manchester did not care whether you felt rested. It did not care whether the morning was bright enough. It cared when you were at the door. Miss a shift and you could lose wages. Repeatedly miss a shift and you could risk losing the job itself. Time had become economic, and that created a peculiar problem for working people. A dependable clock was still expensive. Accuracy mattered, but owning a reliable clock was not equally easy for everyone. Imagine the contradiction. Your livelihood depends on arriving at exactly the right time, but the device that could tell you that time is itself a luxury. The industrial economy had created the need for punctuality faster than it had made precision affordable. Something had to fill the gap. That is where the knocker-up came in. Their tools were almost absurdly simple. Some carried long, light poles that could reach second and third-floor windows from the street. Others used an even stranger method. Dried peas fired from a tube at the glass, producing a soft, repeated tap. The technique tells you something important about the job. The goal was not to make noise. The goal was to make exactly enough noise. A good knocker-up had to wake one paying customer without waking the entire street. Too little, and the worker slept through the shift. Too much, and half the neighborhood complained. So the job required judgment. It required memory. And above all, it required reliability. A knocker-up was not simply someone walking around hitting windows. They had a route, a roster, and a timetable. One house might need waking before another. One customer might need an earlier call. Another might be on a different schedule because their workday started later. And every morning, the same basic promise had to be kept. When the customer paid you to wake them, you had to be there. Newspaper reports from industrial towns in the 1870s described individual knocker-ups serving roughly 80 to 100 clients a day. They charged different rates depending on the hour and season, with the earliest wake-ups costing more. Think about what that means in practice. Before sunrise, while most of the town was still asleep, one person could be moving from window to window, counting minutes instead of watching a clock on a bedside table. Their workplace was the street. Their equipment could be a pole. Their alarm signal was a tap on glass. And their real product was trust. One of the best known was Mary Smith, a London knocker-upper who worked in the early 20th century and into the 1930s. She became famous for using a pea shooter to wake her customers, charging 6 pence a week. The image is almost comic now. A woman walking through the early morning darkness, carrying a little tube and a pocket full of dried peas, stopping at bedroom windows as quietly as possible. But the economics were serious. Another documented knocker-upper, Mrs. Waters, began rising as early as 2:30 in the morning and maintained a large roster of clients. A newspaper account described her supporting a husband who could no longer work after a serious back injury and paying for her son's education from the income. That detail changes the way the profession looks. From a distance, a person paid to tap on windows can sound quaint. Up close, it was working-class labor. The hours were brutal. The income mattered. And the customers were relying on the service for something with real consequences. The job also reveals something uncomfortable about industrial life. Factories created opportunities, but they also created dependencies. Once a workplace ran by the clock, the worker had to run by the clock too. And when the worker could not afford the clock, another worker stepped in. There was even a social cost attached to this kind of labor. Social reformer Helen Dendy used the term the residuum for parts of London's poor population and included knocker-ups among the kinds of labor she regarded as socially marginal. So the profession existed in an odd position. It was necessary, but it was not glamorous. It was useful, but it could be looked down upon. And yet every morning, thousands of people depended on it. That dependency is what makes the knocker-up more than a curiosity. It is an example of how an entire occupation can appear almost out of nowhere, because society creates a very specific problem and then disappear for exactly the same reason. Because the question was never whether people wanted to wake up on time. Of course they did. The question was, who or what would wake them? For a while, the answer was another human being. Then, the machine got better. The end of the knocker-up did not arrive with one dramatic invention. It came through a slow accumulation of cheaper, more practical technology. In 1847, French horologist Antoine Redier patented an adjustable mechanical alarm clock. The crucial difference was simple. The user could choose when the alarm would ring. That changed the relationship between this person and the clock. A clock no longer had to be something you consulted. It could now be something that acted for you at a chosen moment. Over the following decades, manufacturers in Europe and the United States refined clock mechanisms and production methods. By the early 20th century, alarm clocks were increasingly available as mass-produced consumer goods rather than specialized luxuries. A surviving Seth Thomas example from around 1908 to 1913, for instance, was built as a repeatable daily alarm rather than a one-off mechanism. That phrase matters. Repeatable daily alarm. The machine was not simply keeping time. It was taking over a task that had previously required a person's body to be somewhere at a particular hour. And once the technology became affordable enough, the economics became difficult to ignore. Why pay a person every week to walk a route before dawn when a clock could be bought once and left on the bedside side table? The comparison was not really between one worker and one machine. It was between recurring labor and a durable object. Every morning, the knocker-up had to show up again. The alarm clock did not. In 1914, a British newspaper complained that cheap American-made clocks were hurting the domestic clock trade. Whatever the immediate complaint, the larger change was clear. Clocks were becoming cheap enough to challenge an entire human service built around waking people up. And that kind of technological change rarely looks dramatic while it is happening. There is no single morning when everyone in Britain suddenly stops hiring knocker-ups. There is no official announcement that says the profession is finished. Instead, one customer buys a clock, then another. A few workers are no longer needed. A route gets smaller. A regular customer disappears. Another worker finds the trade less profitable. A little, the service loses its economic center. That is how many occupations disappear. Not with a bang, but with the slow removal of the reason anyone needed to pay for them. The knocker-up did not disappear overnight. The profession survived in a few British communities into the late 1950s, with isolated evidence of knocker-ups still working around 1960. But by then, the old relationship with time was already fading. The worker did not need to hire someone to stand beneath the window. The alarm had moved inside the home. And that is the point at which this story stops being about an unusual old occupation and starts being about technology itself. The alarm clock did more than wake people. It changed who was responsible for waking them. A human task became a household function. A service became an object. A recurring payment became a one-time purchase. That transformation sounds small because the result is so familiar. But think about how strange the old system was. A stranger knew what time you had to wake up. That stranger knew where you lived. That stranger had to remember your window. And before sunrise, while you were still asleep, that person walked through the dark to make sure you opened your eyes. For generations, waking up on time was not simply a mechanical problem. It was a human service. It depended on people who remembered routes, counted windows, walked through bad weather, and showed up while the rest of the neighborhood was still asleep. Their work disappeared because the thing they were providing became cheap enough to do without them. That is why the story is bigger than the alarm clock. Technology does not only create new jobs and new conveniences. Sometimes it quietly removes a job so completely that future generations barely realize it ever existed. The alarm clock is not really the story. The story is what happened when something once too expensive to own became cheap enough to replace a person. And once you see that pattern, the knocker-up stops looking like a strange footnote from industrial Britain. It starts looking like a warning about the future. Because somewhere around us today, there are probably jobs whose existence depends on the same thing. A task that is still too expensive, too inconvenient, or simply too human to automate completely. And one day, a cheaper machine may come along. Not to destroy a profession in a single moment, but to make the profession unnecessary one small customer at a time. That is how the knocker-up disappeared. Not because people stopped needing to wake up. Because eventually they could afford to wake themselves.